Mr. Octagonal here, and we are back on MLB The Show 19, back with the rebuilds. I do want to be more consistent, and I guess I'm starting to do a little better, I don't know. So today we're going to be rebuilding the mess of a franchise known as the Miami Marlins. This team absolutely sucks, and they are not going to be easy. So without further ado, let's look at this roster. Not a lot of talent. The starting pitching isn't bad. Caleb Smith's having a good year, and you have guys like Trevor Richards, Pablo Lopez, Hernandez, Sandy Alcantara, Sixto Sanchez. A lot of these guys have very bright futures in baseball, but you can't really say that about the other positions. Relief pitcher, Drew Streckenrider, not bad, and that's about it. There's Wei Yin Chen. Woohoo. Sergio Romo was good, but now he's old. Catcher Jorge Alfaro is definitely someone who we can look to build around. He's a good player. Neil Walker is not having a bad year, but he's old. Starlin Castro is not great. Brian Anderson's definitely a long-term building block. He's a really solid player. At shortstop, Miguel Rojas, no. Left field, Curtis Granderson was good, but now he's old as dirt. Center field, Russell Herrera, no. Lewis Brinson, the disappointment of the century, but Monte Harrison and Victor Mesa do both have A potential, so I guess here's that. And then right field, Garrett Cooper, Gabby Guerrero. No, this team is a mess. There are not many building blocks. So our first trade, Trevor Rogers, talented pitching prospect. Caleb Smith is having a good year. And then a left fielder for Luis Castillo from the Reds, who's a really good player. And then we're also getting Rhys Hoskins. The clip didn't save. So 2 building blocks for the future. Here's another one. Jose Alvarado, closer from the Rays, trading Starlin Castro is obviously really solid. Eliezer Hernandez is a pretty good starting pitcher as well. But Alvarado is only 23 years old, and he's really good. So looking at the lineup, not too many great players here. Maybe Brian Anderson, Rhys Hoskins, and Jorge Alfaro. That's about it. And then the pitching, we did add Luis Castillo and Jose Alvarado. And there are some guys with potential like Pablo Lopez and Sandy Alcantara, but it's not great. This team definitely needs some work, and this year is probably going to be pretty ugly. So, looking at the MLB draft, our first rounder, Wilson Hoggett, pretty good player, 68 overall with 94 potential, and then the rest of the draft was meh. I forgot to sign these guys to contracts, so I signed the first 4 in free agency, and then the other 3 just went elsewhere. So we ended up winning 67 games, obviously not good enough to make the playoffs. And then I think the Houston Astros beat the Dodgers. Yes, the Astros over Dodgers in the World Series once again. So the Dodgers lose 3 straight World Series as Curtis Granderson's going to retire. He actually had a pretty solid final season with us. I mean, looking at the stats, Brian Anderson was decent. Rhys Hoskins hit for power, but not really contact. Jorge Alfaro was meh. Martin Prado was pretty good. And then looking at the pitching rotation, not great from Luis Castillo. Pablo Lopez was meh. Same with Jose Urena, Wei Yin Chen, Sandy Alcantara. So no one really did great. Jose Alvarado, 2.38 ERA. I'll take that any day of the week. Drew Streckenrider also had a good year. So looking at free agency, a little bit weaker than usual, but we are going after some guys, mainly as trade bait. We ended up signing Marcell Ozuna. He's back with the Marlins. It looks like he had an awful year. And then Yasmani Grandal was also signed. We also tried to pick up Anthony Rendon. That didn't really work out. So Grandal, Monte Harrison, and Alexander Palma, a free agent we signed, is headed to the Yankees for Gleyber Torres, a phenomenal young second base prospect. And then Marcell Ozuna, along with Drew Streckenrider and Peter O'Brien for Eloy Jimenez. Really good young outfielder with the Chicago White Sox. Those 2 guys who we just traded for aren't the most talked about, but they both have a ton of potential. So I thought the Rule 5 draft would be a good source of getting trade bait for us, because we really need anything. Taijuan Walker was not protected by the Diamondbacks, which is sort of weird. But we ended up going with Hunter Harvey with our first pick, pretty much based on potential. And then another guy with potential who we drafted, Ray Black, is going to the Tigers for Fernando Cortez, who I think was your top 5 draft pick. And then Harvey, along with some other guys, are going to the Padres for Hunter Renfroe, not the tiny Clemson receiver. And then Isan Diaz and a few other guys for Diego Castillo from the Rays. So the lineup is a little bit better. Gleyber Torres and Eloy Jimenez are now here. So there are now, I'd say, 5 building blocks, maybe 6 with Hunter Renfroe. And then the pitching rotation. The rotation itself didn't change too much. We did add Joe Ross in Rule 5 and signed Martin Perez. Wei Yin Chen and Sandy Alcantara are now more of the lone relievers. And then Diego Castillo will be replacing Drew Streckenrider as the setup man. So we ended up winning 73 games. Improvement, but still not good. But I guess improvement is fine. Looking at the stats, great year for Brian Antoine, hitting .312. Miguel Rojas is gone. Great year from Gleyber Torres. Great year for Rhys Hoskins, 35 dingers. Need to see more contact-wise from Hunter Renfroe. Not an awful year for Eloy Jimenez. He's young. Jorge Alfaro could have done worse. Could have done better. And then, I don't know how we got Joey Ricard. I guess the game gave him to us. Luis Castillo, great year. Pablo Lopez, Ross, Urania, Perez. So everyone's ERA was less than 4, so that's really good for rotation. Diego Castillo, not awful. Jose Alvarado, you want more for your closer. And then the Dodgers finally win the World Series, beating the Cleveland Indians. So free agency is solid. There's one name that pops out, and that's Mookie Betts, of course, as him along with Andrew Miller have accepted contracts. So they are now Marlins. And then we also signed Brad Hand, and him and a few other guys are being traded for Matt Manning. I wanted to get cap space to sign some other guys, and we did that in Keon Kella and Jock Peterson. We did sign Peterson for trade bait, so we're making another trade here, trading a few talented players for Reynaldo Lopez. And then Peterson and Matt Manning were traded to the Padres for second baseman Luis Urias. He's likely going to play shortstop. So now this lineup is filled with building blocks. Everyone here, all those top 8 guys, are players we can realistically build around. And then the rotation, we called Sixto Sanchez up. Joe Ross looks like a really nice Rule 5 pick. So all around, this team is starting to come to form. The bullpen could use some work, but it is pretty solid with the additions of Keon Kella and Andrew Miller. So we ended up winning 98 games, major improvement from last year. As taking a look at the statistics, Luis Urias, not too bad. Brian Anderson is great. Mookie Betts, very solid. Hoskins, very solid. Gleyber Torres, solid. Eloy Jimenez, not bad. Hunter Renfroe, decent. Alfaro, decent. So no one had a great year at the plate, but everyone was good. No one had a bad year. Castillo was good. Lopez was meh. Pablo Lopez was good. So really, Pablo Lopez and Luis Castillo were the only really bright spots of a rotation. Would like to see more from Reynaldo Lopez, and the bullpen was all right. So looking at the first round, we end up beating the Dodgers. Now we have to take on the Philadelphia Phillies. There's Caleb Smith, who of course we had. We're up 3-1, and we finished up the series taking on either the Red Sox or the Oakland A's, and it ended up being the Oakland A's. No, it was the Red Sox. I thought it was Oakland. So I guess it's Boston, as we lose the first 3. And then we end up losing in 5, so unfortunately we do not win the World Series, but we did make some strides. Here a look at the playoff stats. Would have liked to see more from guys like Eloy Jimenez and Hunter Renfroe. Once again, no one really stood out at the plate. The rotation, Castillo, yuck. Reynaldo Lopez, good. Pablo Lopez, good. All of the pitchers were good except for Castillo, and I guess to an extent Sixto Sanchez. Need more from Jose Alvarado and Diego Castillo. So we need really one more guy in the rotation, and that can be Sean Manaea, trading Hunter Renfroe, Joe Ross, and a prospect to get him. I think that's a pretty solid deal for us. And then looking at free agency, this free agency is stacked. But there are 3 guys I decided to go after. They are Francisco Lindor, Chris Bryant, and Noah Syndergaard. But there's one problem. We're paying guys $111 million, so we need to make some trades, and one contract pops out. That's Mookie Betts. So $41 worth of salary, including Mookie Betts, are headed to the Braves for Ozzie Albies, who's only making like $4 million, and now that dropped to $74 million. That makes it a lot more reasonable that we can get Lindor or Bryant or Syndergaard. We ended up signing Francisco Lindor, and then we ended up signing Chris Bryant. So 2 phenomenal hitters added to the lineup, and then we signed Noah Syndergaard. So we did what we needed to do. We got the 3 guys we wanted. However, they would not stay. Syndergaard and Bryant are going to the Yankees for Luis Severino and Giancarlo Stanton. Kind of wanted to bring back Stanton Miami. I thought that'd be fun. Then Luis Castillo is really good. And then Luis Urias and Sean Manaea are being traded for Jose Barrios. Luis Urias wasn't going to start, so I figured we'd try to get an upgrade somewhere, so I figured starting pitching. And then we're also going to get Josh Hader from the Brewers. So here's a look at the lineup. We pretty much replaced Luis Urias with Ozzie Albies, and other than that, and we also added Francisco Lindor. So other than that, the core is very similar. to last year's. And then the rotation is quite different. Luis Severino, Luis Castillo, Jose Barrios, Reynaldo Lopez, and Sixto Sanchez. We have Pablo Lopez as well, who I didn't really want to put at long reliever, but we didn't really have any other choices. And then here's a look at the bullpen. Josh Hader, of course, the new closer. He's the only big impact pickup. So we ended up winning 108 games, which makes sense since his team is so talented. Looking at the numbers, Ozzie Albies wasn't really great. But other than that, Gleyber Torres was excellent. Brian Anderson was excellent. Giancarlo was excellent. Rhys Hoskins was excellent. So was Lindor. Eloy Jimenez had a great year. Jorge Alfaro had a great year. And then looking at the rotation, Luis Severino, not bad. Luis Castillo, incredible. Barrios, not bad. Reynaldo Lopez, pretty good. Sixto Sanchez, pretty good. Everyone really did good, other than Albies and maybe Tavon Guerrero. But other than that, this team looked really solid. So in the first round, we're taking on the New York Mets. We lose Game 1. We lose Game 2. This is where it starts to get scary, but we win Game 3. We win Game 4 and Game 5. The Mets choked a 2-0 lead in the chat, boys. Now, taking on the St. Louis Cardinals, we win Game 1. We win Game 2. We win Game 3. And we win Game 4, bringing out the brooms. And in the World Series, we're going to be playing the Houston Astros. As will we win this series? We're up 2-1. We are up. Now we're tied 2-2. 3-2. Can we close it out in 6? Yes, we do. The Marlins are world champions after 4 years. So there you go. We did do the dang thing. As Brian Anderson won World Series MVP, playoff MVP went to Ozzie Albies, who had only 3 less home runs than he did in the regular season. So final look at the squad: Albies, Anderson, Torres, Stanton, Hoskins, Lindor, Jimenez, Alfaro. And then looking at the pitching rotation: Severino, Castillo, Barrios, Lopez, Sanchez. And then in the bullpen, Lopez again, Diego Castillo, Alvarado, Miller, Hader. Really talented squad. Make sure to vote for who we rebuild next.